Russian Z-propagandist and war supporter Maxim Kalashnikov has made a sharp assessment of the situation in the Russian army and economy. He fears that by the end of the year, the statehood of the Russian Federation may crumble. Kalashnikov wrote about this on his Telegram channel. Kalashnikov reported that he was corresponding with Russian soldiers from the city of Shakhty of Rostov Region, who are currently fighting against Ukraine. And in their rank, there is serious dissatisfaction with the state of affairs in the Russian Federation. Gidroprivod is the only enterprise in the city of Shakhty that openly works for defenses. Since April, the management has laid off some of the employees, cut salaries, and removed bonuses for working on holidays and extras. People do not leave only because there is a shortage of work in the city, Kalashnikov said. The occupiers in the trenches complain not only about the collapse of the economy, but also about general disappointment in the war. The artillery guys are grumbling that if we don't defeat Ukraine by December, a wave will come from the front in the spirit of the end of the First World War. Kalashnikov reports, judging by the statement of the Z-propagandist, the mood on the front lines is becoming threatening to the system itself. The comparison with the events of 100 years ago is not accidental. In 1917, the imperial army, tired of the senseless war, revolted and brought about the collapse of the tsarist regime. Judging by Kalashnikov's words, some of the Russian military are already beginning to think in this direction. In fact, his post is a direct warning to Putin from his own supporters. If the government does not stop this exhausting war, it risks losing control over its own soldiers. And if the front collapses, the entire rest of the structure, political, economic, and ideological, may crumble after it. He also made fun of the Russian army's successes, calling them illusory. If we remove the achievements of the first stage of the SVO, remove the merits of the PMC Wagner and the merits of the DPRK army in the liberation of the Kursk region, then it becomes obvious that in 50 days, only a few villages will be captured, and that's it, the Z blogger stated.
The Israeli army continued to build a concrete wall on Friday to enforce the fence area separating Israeli-controlled Golan Heights from Syria. According to Associated Press, hundreds of the Druze community in Syria and Israel gathered along the border fence in the past days following fighting between government forces and Syria's Druze factions. This comes as renewed clashes broke out overnight between Druze armed groups and members of Bedouin clans in southern Syria, and government forces were preparing to deploy again to the area Friday after pulling out under a ceasefire agreement that halted several days of violence earlier this week, officials said. Government security forces agreed with some of the Druze factions that they would re-enter the area to impose stability and protect state institutions, according to two Syrian officials who spoke Friday on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Syrian government forces had largely pulled out of the Druze-majority southern province of Sweda after days of clashes with militias linked to the Druze religious minority that threatened to unravel the country's fragile post-war transition. Members of the Druze community in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights were seen gathered at the border with Syria and crossing into the buffer zone on Thursday morning. According to Associated Press, it comes as Syrian government officials and leaders in the Druze religious minority announced a renewed ceasefire Wednesday after days of clashes that have threatened to unravel the country's post-war political transition and drawn military intervention by powerful neighbor Israel. The announcement came after Israel launched rare airstrikes in the heart of Damascus, an escalation in a campaign that it said was intended to defend the Druze and push Islamic militants away from its border. The Druze form a substantial community in Israel as well as in Syria and are seen in Israel as a loyal minority, often serving in the military. The escalation in Syria began with tit-for-tat kidnappings and attacks between local Sunni Bedouin tribes and Druze armed factions in the southern province of Sweda. Government forces that intervened to restore order clashed with the Druze militias, but also in some cases attacked civilians. The violence appeared to be the most serious threat yet to efforts by Syria's new rulers to consolidate control of the country after a rebel offensive led by Islamist insurgent groups ousted longtime despotic leader Bashar Assad in December, ending a nearly 14-year civil war. Interim President Ahmad al-Shara, in footage on state television early Thursday, called the Druze an integral part of Syria and denounced Israel's actions as sowing division. The Druze religious sect began as a 10th-century offshoot of Ismailism, a branch of Shiite Islam. More than half of the roughly 1 million Druze worldwide live in Syria. Most of the other Druze live in Lebanon and Israel, including in the Golan Heights, which Israel captured from Syria in the 1967 Mideast War and annexed in 1981. Druze in the Golan Heights have been gathering along the border fence to protest the violence against Druze in Syria.